Ah, I see, you've come back for more.
Before I start the review, I just wanted to mention a few criticisms I got on my last video. One was that my audio editing was shit, so I've decided to try to improve the quality a bit so it doesn't make you want to cut your ears off with a broken bottle. Another was that the review is too long, but that was for a reason. It was the first episode of the show. The first episode and last episode of the season will have the longest reviews due to their importance in the story. The rest probably won't be half-hour long like my last video though. Alrighty then, onto the episode. After Jughead talks about Jason and his autopsy for a while, we cut to Archie in the middle of the night tossing and turning, feeling guilty that he was in the woods making out with Grundy while Jason died. I don't really understand why he feels guilty. It's not like he could have done anything to prevent Jason's death. And as I said in the last review, he could just go to the police and explain that he was walking in the bush and heard the gunshot, and if they needed evidence, he could just call Grundy in as a witness, who could explain that she just happened to be in the bush at the same time as Archie and also heard the gunshot. And I'm sure it would give the cops some information to who the killer may be, but that would be the smart thing to do. Anyway, Archie goes on to his phone to text Betty in the middle of the night, and surprise, surprise, she's also awake. But she replies that she doesn't want to talk, instead of just pretending to sleep and not answer. I know that it may sound justified, but I've gotten rejected by a couple girls in my day, and it's best if you just try to remain friends with them, instead of being bitter and ignoring them like an asshole. For some reason, they look at each other through their windows. Huh, maybe that's how Archie knew Betty was awake. Fucking creeper. Then, when Betty walks away from the window, Archie puts some pants on, but not a shirt, and runs all the way to Grundy's house, who lets him in despite being disturbed by his presence, to talk about Jason being shot. And for some reason, Archie does get the idea to call anonymously, which, despite being uncredible information, is still better than doing nothing. I mean, if you would just do what I told you to do the last time, you wouldn't have to worry about this crap. You know, this scene is very redundant. We had this scene already, like twice last episode, and it has the exact same end result every time. Only difference here is that Grundy explains the consequences for coming clean about what happened.
Everybody knows that we were there. I could lose my job. You could be expelled. We could go to jail.
I think you got a couple of your facts wrong there. If they find out, you will lose your job and you will go to jail. From what I can tell, it's not the minor that faces consequences, it's the adult. I mean, at this point, I would believe it if Grundy was a manipulative sex offender. If they were delivering drugs in the woods together, sure, it wouldn't be the best thing in the world, but at least it would make sense. But you can just do what I've been telling you to do this whole time. If you're getting sick of me saying that, that's because I'm getting sick of everyone being too oblivious to reality to even make a slightly intelligent decision. Anyway, the next morning, we cut to Betty's room, where both Alice and Hal, her dad, talk about them going out late every night, which seems odd, like they're trying to hide something. And no, before you say anything, it was neither of them. They're obviously trying to get you to believe that it was Alice, though.
But the sociopathic son of the wealthiest family in town murdered? That's a national obsession waiting to happen.
I know at the beginning of the first episode she seemed glad that Jason was dead, but why is she going to tell everyone? It just makes her look like an asshole. Hang on, she's taking advantage of someone drowning to advance her newspaper writing column. First of all, you're in no place to call anyone a sociopath. Eric Cartman is less of a sociopath than you are, which is a feat, because he's supposed to be an over-the-top asshole.
You know what I love most about you? Is that you always want to see the good in people. Even people like Cheryl Blossom and Veronica Lodge and Archie Andrews.
Second of all, you go into Betty's room to make yourself look worse before saying this. Knowing that this is exposition that they could have placed anywhere, I think that they wanted Alice to say this specifically because Alice wants Betty to know she's deranged, but still believe that Alice is a good person. Third of all, you bring up Cheryl, Veronica, and Archie, none of which Betty has talked to because she's pissed at all of them. She doesn't see the good in any of them at the moment, so what the hell is Alice talking about?
When they betrayed you this weekend, you saw their true colors, didn't you?
Okay, I can see why she hates Cheryl, and Archie broke her heart, so I can see why she might be bitter for a little while. But Veronica? She didn't do anything! She made out with Archie after the dance! Do you not remember at the dance, Archie was reluctant to date you, and you had absolutely no reaction? So, Betty agrees when her mom forbids her from seeing them. Also, yes, Alex treats Betty like she's 12 years old. Also, who forbids their 16-year-old daughter from seeing people? If Betty didn't like them, she wouldn't hang around them. Alice, you suck at parenting. We got to Archie's door where...
Walk me to school?
Did I miss a scene or something? It's not just me who remembers Betty being pissed at Archie just last night, right? Maybe Betty just realized how much she was overreacting and decided to be rational. I would be nice if that was a scene, Or you could just remove that whole thing with Betty not liking Archie because she doesn't like her from the end of the last episode, and things would make much more sense. Also, during the walk, we learn that Grundy isn't the only manipulative dick in the show because, surprise, surprise, Alice is too.
What my mom wants from what I want. I think I want.
Which is?
My mom says I should never speak to you again.
How do I know? Betty seems to do the opposite of whatever Alice tells her to do, but I'll get to that at some point down the road. Anyway, Betty and Archie rekindle their friendship on their way to school, as they explain why everything that happened at the end of the last episode was pointless. Once they get to school, Jughead makes a couple of remarks about Jason's death before he spots his natural enemy, high school jocks. But instead of walking in the other direction, he walks towards them and gets harassed. Look, I can't really feel sorry if you chose to walk towards them. Meanwhile, Betty goes to the office to see that Veronica delivered flowers to Betty as an apology. For what, I don't know. As you've heard me say before, Archie and Betty weren't dating when Veronica made out with Archie. Then again, she also made out with you, so I call that even Steven. Once Veronica emerges from the shadows, she tells Betty that she also got cupcakes and a manicure. Veronica continues to ramble on about how sorry she is, saying she was possessed by old Veronica, and how she'll never do anything like that again. Wait, last episode, didn't Veronica say she moved to Riverdale to get a fresh start? I mean, as I've explained many times, it's not like she even did anything immoral. As I just said, it's not like Archie was cheating. Betty decides to forgive Veronica, which surprises both Veronica and Kevin. I didn't mention this, but Kevin is also with them. I don't know why, since he doesn't do anything of substance. So, now that their friendship is reestablished, that pretty much removes the point from the last 20 minutes of the last episode, and makes everything that's happened so far 100% pointless. Actually, believe it or not, it gets worse than that. You could argue that it's supposed to show that their friendship can survive bumps, but for that to work, they need to be in a quarrel for more than just a couple days. Alright, back to something somewhat important. We cut to the sheriff talking over the loudspeakers about...
You already know the details, but your classmate, Jason Blossom's body was found late Saturday night.
Wait, Saturday night? I thought they found his body on the night of the dance, and if you remember, they had school on that day. It was the first day of school, as a matter of fact. And I just realized something that I don't think the writers did. Cheryl was there when Jason got shot. Wouldn't she have heard the gunshot? This once again shows that the writers don't give jack shit about continuity. Back at the office, Cheryl starts to speak in an angry tone about how her and her family will not rest until Jason's killer is found, which might be dramatic if they didn't follow it with...
Riverdale strong.
Okay, seriously, nobody says hashtag anymore. All that line did was kill the mood. While the sheriff continues talking, we see Archie feeling guilty until Jughead comes up to him and only now brings up that on the weekend of July 4th, he and Archie were supposed to go on a road trip, but bailed at the last second. Later, in science class, Archie and Cheryl pair up because plot, and Archie begins apologizing for Jason's death, wishing he could have done something.
But unless you were at Sweetwater River and no shot Jason.
Okay, I get the stereotype that
I'm not
teenagers
very
don't
serious, but I
understand
can
subtlety,
take one
but come on, this is just too easy.
Weird what?
Eventually, it gets really uncomfortable
Oh.
as Cheryl starts stabbing a frog like a maniac with a demented look on her face, which gets everyone to look at her oddly, and honestly, I don't blame them. Then we cut to Alice, who is bribing one of the doctors in order to have access to Jason's body. I know what they're trying to do, solidify how much Alice hates Jason, but this scene just ends up becoming creepy and making Alice seem more fucked up. This next scene is a little bit odd, because Veronica and Archie seem to interact exactly like they did before. You'd think that after the incident with Betty and Archie, even though they resolved it, there would be a little bit of awkwardness between them, but no. Once again cementing my point that the whole fight thing was completely useless. Actually, after Archie plays a song, it reignites the same feeling that Betty was feeling the night that Archie denied her as a partner. It might work if, it didn't come out of nowhere. It also doesn't help that Betty was the one who asked him to play. It honestly feels like Betty's stuck in some sort of cycle. When Archie goes to talk to her, she says that she could try to pretend that the night of the dance didn't happen. Wait, earlier today, you were saying that you only stopped talking to Archie because your mother didn't want you talking to him, but now you're saying that the sadness was genuine. Either she's lying, or the writers just can't keep their continuity straight. Archie doesn't even bring this up either. After Betty leaves, Archie gets called by the principal to talk about why he was nervous earlier. Now I'm going to say it one more time, and that's it. Just tell him you were in the woods going for a walk, and that you just happened to hear a gunshot, and if he needs a witness, you can call in Grundy, who can say she was walking in a different part of the woods at the exact same time when she also heard it. He barges into Grundy's class to tell her about the situation.
What did you say?
Nothing. That I didn't. But he said if I did, I shouldn't be scared and he'd make sure I was okay.
Of course he would. You're his student.
This reinforces my theory about Grundy being a manipulative pedophile, because I'm pretty sure most principals wouldn't want anything to do with the suspected murderer. Anyway, after more sappy dialogue, we hear Grundy admit she's still in love with Archie, and Grundy continues to talk about their relationship being a secret. I'm not gonna fucking say it again. Then they kiss. God, I thought we were done with this shit. Well, at least this time Jughead catches them in the act. Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. Am I really watching this? Was there actually a scene in the show that displayed a dozen underage girls twerking? Yes, there is. Wait, first Veronica and Betty kissed as cheerleaders, and now cheerleaders are twerking. Do the writers have some fetish for 16-year-old girls having sexual interaction or something? Because my concern for this show is going through the roof. Yeah, that totally looks like a teenager. I guess that was the only way they could have high school girls twerk and get away with it. Eventually, Cheryl gets mad that their performance isn't perfect, and to be fair, nothing they were doing resembled cheerleading in the slightest. The rest of the scene seems to reinforce that Cheryl's just a bloating asshole.
I know everyone grieves differently, but Cheryl's hosting a pep rally to cope with her loss. That's either brilliant or psychotic or both.
The show seems to be self-aware that Cheryl is pretty unstable mentally, so I don't know whether or not they were trying to point out their own errors thinking it would make them invisible, or if they just thought it wasn't already obvious to the audience. You know, as if that frog scene didn't make it obvious enough. Betty and Veronica fight again, and Betty scorns Veronica for kissing Archie, which once again happened after Archie decided not to be Betty's girlfriend at the dance. Everything that happened after that scene seems to pretend like that didn't happen, so why was it in the episode? At any rate, they end up fighting again. So, what was the point of that whole flower thing earlier? They're literally in the exact same spot they were in at the beginning of the episode.
Most of the time, the people we like don't like us back.
If you're talking about crushes, that line is actually really realistic, more realistic than most of the dialogue, so it actually kind of took me off guard. Why am I bringing this up? Because it surprised me. Yes, something realistic surprised me in the show. Just let that sink in. Back to the fight. Cheryl bumps into their conversation and Betty turns into a douche and offers Cheryl Veronica's ticket to the manicure, to which Cheryl accepts. Like I keep saying, Veronica didn't technically do anything wrong here, so it just comes across as Betty being sour that Veronica got a kiss from Archie and she didn't, so she decided to act like a bitch towards her. Also, didn't Cheryl also hate Betty? There was an entire scene last episode dedicated to this aspect of her character, but now that Betty has something to offer, she decides to be her friend. You know, at this point, I honestly don't know who I hate more, Alice or Cheryl. And we're only halfway through the episode. Jesus Christ. We cut to Hermione and Veronica at the chocolate shop, where Hermione is a waitress.
We're surviving, Ronnie, by our wits, because that's what we lodge women do.
Remember before when I said this show had some self-awareness? Well, I take it back. From what we've seen Veronica do, she may not be that stupid, but she's not what I'd call particularly intelligent. And her mom isn't much better. I mean, according to her, getting a job to support them is witty. Maybe that line is supposed to be ironic or something. I really don't know.
Is, Betty still mad at you?
Back to no texting. What about you?
I'm back to being the shallow, toxic rich bitch who ruins everything in her path.
Archie explains to Veronica how he feels bad about what he did, but it's not immoral to not like someone who has a crush on you. As Veronica said in the previous scene,
Most of the time, the people we like don't like us back.
back at Betty's house, we see that Cheryl and Betty are hanging out. How Cheryl got past Alice, I will never know.
Should come over and see it sometime. But just you, not Veronica. I mean, she must be evil incarnate if even you won't have her as a friend.
She insulted Betty, to her face. First of all, Cheryl, if you don't like Veronica because something you thought she did was bitchy, you're a hypocrite. Second of all, why would you say that Betty has no standards for friends right to her face? Anyway, because plot, Cheryl decides to become Betty's friend so she can get some information about Polly.
You dumb cow. Someone shot my brother, and I think it was your crazy, tweaked-out sister.
Well, I was right about Cheryl only pretending to like people for her own selfish ends, but I'm pretty sure you're suspecting the wrong family member. I'd imagine you'd suspect Betty's crazy tweaked-out mother instead, and because Betty seems to listen to Alice, it would give Cheryl some actual motivation to treat Betty like shit.
Get the hell out of my house before I kill you.
Very poor choice of words, Betty. See, if it was Alice that Cheryl suspected, and she was the one that said that to Cheryl, it would actually make a lot more sense and be dramatic. Anyway, we cut to Archie going to his house in the middle of the night, where Jughead is waiting at Archie's porch like a stalker. It might just be me, but the fact that he's been waiting there for hours is a little unintentionally funny, but also a bit creepy. I'm pretty sure the writers were just hoping you wouldn't question it and move on. Jughead confronts Archie about his relationship with Grundy, so Archie confesses his gunshot story.
Find out about Grundy. A kid is dead, Archie. And you're worried about some cougar. Don't call her that.
Jughead is now my favorite character. He actually tells Archie that he shouldn't be selfish and brings up that Grundy's a pedo. He even brings up that Grundy's just saying he shouldn't come clean because she's afraid about getting arrested. I told you guys she was a manipulative pedophile.
She's messing with you, man. And she's messing with your mind. What the hell do you know about...
Here's the thing. If Archie just did what I've been telling him to do, Grundy wouldn't get arrested and the police could have their evidence. Archie gets offended by this and tells Jughead to piss off. Next, we see Alice using some type of smoke to disinfect Betty's room from Cheryl's evil spirit. Yes, Alice really is that brain dead. Tell me why you let Cheryl in your house again. Here's what's weird. Betty seems to believe that she's in the right, and the episode tries to get you to sympathize with her, and I just can't. When a girl I like didn't like me back and started dating someone else, did I become a better asshole? No. I remained friends with her and was happy for her to know that she had a boyfriend. I can only assume that Betty acts this way because of the way she was raised, and because Alice believes Betty to be in the right, I can only see this as Alice's fault. Or I would if it weren't for this scene.
You were right. Sometimes it's hard to admit things to yourself. My mother's crazy.
Betty admits she was being bitter and acting like a douche. This scene is literally the next scene after Alice tries to convince Betty to never talk to her friends again. Hold on, are you noticing a pattern? Remember at the beginning of the episode when Alice wanted Betty to stop talking to Archie? She immediately went to Archie. Last scene, she said the exact same thing, but about Archie, Cheryl, and Veronica, and here she is talking to Veronica. It's like Betty has an impulse to do the complete opposite of what her mother thinks is the right course of action. What does that tell you about Alice? Alice may not be the brightest bulb in the tree, but she has to know that Betty's been talking to her friends, since Betty keeps telling her about it. And it always seems to happen immediately after she tells Betty not to talk to her friends. And you'd think that after that incident with Polly, she would be a bit more angry about Betty hanging out with Cheryl, but she's just angry that Cheryl exists. It's safe to say that Alice probably knows at this point that Betty does the opposite of what Alice tells her to do. After what happened with Polly, Alice would know that telling Betty not to hang out with Cheryl wouldn't work. If you want to argue that Alice can't control what Betty does, you'd think she'd actually put some effort to make sure that what happened to Polly won't happen with Betty, but because she doesn't, you know what, I'll let you figure it out. Back on track, Veronica does explain to Betty that just because Archie doesn't want to date her, it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about her. I would give Veronica credit, but she waited this long to tell Betty, so this whole episode is just redundant. Betty doesn't like Archie, then she does, then she doesn't again, then she does again. Later, Reggie, the head jock, accuses Jughead for Jason's murder, saying he did things to the body.
It's called necrophilia, Reggie. Can you spell it?
For some reason, Reggie gets offended by this. I guess he hasn't heard of playful insults. He tries to attack Jughead, but Archie stops him, and for some reason, this convinces Reggie that they both committed Jason's murder. In a dramatic story, pure stupidity is not dramatic or funny, it's just stupid. When Archie tries to tell Reggie this, he gets the shit beaten out of him. Afterwards, we cut to Archie at home, where Archie tries to explain to his dad the situation with him and Grundy in the shot, without giving it away, trying to get an answer. Fred tells him to do the right thing. You remember what I've been saying this whole time? Well, because of how manipulative Grundy's become, the right thing would be to come clean and get her arrested. One less criminal to worry about. He goes up to Grundy and tells her what he's doing. From the music that's playing, I'm assuming they want us to feel bad, but I'm happy. I'm happy that she's going to pay for what she did. If you think it was Archie's decision, remember back in the first episode, Grundy was the one who went up to him. She was the one who seduced him. So no, I do not feel sorry for this character. Archie then apologizes to Jughead for what happened last night, and they seem to have made up in their friendship. Though from what I can tell, Jughead didn't thank Archie for saving his ass earlier. Betty does notice his eye in a scene that made me laugh. I don't know why, but seeing everyone run into Archie like a fucking train just made me laugh. Then the Pussycats perform a song. This time, it's Sugar Honey Honey.
Sugar do 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 do. Aw, honey honey do 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 do.
You could argue that in this universe, they wrote the song. I'm just glad that they didn't have someone flat out say that they're singing an already existing song this time.
I saw this girl, I wanna know her name. She got this body, it's dry.
Again? Didn't Cheryl say earlier that she wanted them to change up what they were doing? And yet, they're still doing the exact same thing, including the twerking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't cheerleading more like aerobics than actual dancing? You see them throwing themselves around and cheering for the players. Anyway, when Archie gets on the field, Cheryl gets sad that someone else is Jason's place. Oh, so that whole number thing last episode did have a point, except it didn't because literally anyone else could have had his number. Veronica goes to check on Cheryl, who says this. Veronica thinks about it for a second and then forgets about it, so I really don't understand what she means. The only reason I bring this up is because I assume it will be important at some point, so forgive me if it isn't. Later on, Betty and Veronica go to the chocolate shop.
That no matter what, no boy will ever come between us again.
Veronica seems to have missed the point that Betty was just being bitter, but whatever, if it's good enough to get Betty to stop being bitter, then it's good enough for me. Archie and Jughead then join, and they have a friendly chat, while Jughead narrates over everything. Okay, unless what's happening is relevant to the novel that you're writing, then you don't need to tell us what's going on screen. We have eyes. If this was Jughead's journal, it would be acceptable, but you have to stick with what you chose. The next day, we see the principal and the sheriff come in to talk to Cheryl, who hold up her hands and says she's guilty. Then, as the principal and the sheriff are walking away with Cheryl, Jughead narrates over that the gunshot wasn't what killed Jason, and that he really died over a week later. So Cheryl's been lying. This also means that there was no point for Archie to come clean to the police about the gunshot, which was apparently unrelated. Then why'd they spend so much time on it? Also, if you remember, at the end of the last episode, Jughead said that the first arrest would occur the day after the cop took Jason's body. But they never did. And even if you want to argue that Cheryl was the arrest, this episode took place over the course of days, so it can't be that. I think that this was just their way of getting people to continue watching, but because nothing interesting happened in this episode, they had to lie. The only thing plot relevant that this episode managed to do was bring Archie, Veronica, and Betty's friendship back, while also shoehorning in Jughead. And of course, the end where they finished the autopsy. Everything else was just pointless filler, and because some of the things that happened, especially the whole unrelated gunshot thing, it makes things that happened last episode filler as well. When you have a subplot that you focus so much time on, you're not supposed to say it's void and meaningless at the end. You're supposed to build it up to something, because when it doesn't, you're pretty much pointing out that it's filler. But, to be absolutely fair, I'll give the show the benefit of the doubt and assume that it will come back in some other episode. When it comes to the quality of this episode, I find it worse than the first episode, because like I said, some of the things that happen in this episode are so blatant about their uselessness that they actually take point away from scenes in the first episode. Pretty much just a fuck you to anyone who may have been invested in those subplots. Anyway, see you all next time when I review the third episode. Hopefully they won't forget all the things they said in this episode, but you honestly never know with this show.